Welcome, everybody, to Theory Underground. I'm your host, David McKerracher, and today we have a very special guest. You're a friend of the channel, but you're also a co-instructor at Theory Underground for the What is Sex course. It's great to have you, Cadell. You're also the founder, for those who don't know, of Philosophy Portal, which is also a teaching platform online. Wanted to bring you in today so that we could talk about the year in review and what's to come, and kind of just what it's like doing underground theory on the internet today and lessons we're learning as we go. So yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, man, all good. Great conversation with Todd, and yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting year, I think, for both of us. I mean, looking back on everything since we've met, I forget if it was in December or January last year, but I think we both achieved a lot. I mean, I was looking back on our video collections. I mean, we did a course together. We did a conversation on the idea of the university. And that ended up becoming sort of a foundation for some papers that were in the Underground Theory anthology.
Including
pick up a copy of the Underground Theory anthology. Yeah, that was at least my contribution for that was inspired by your course with Carl Jaspers, the idea of the university. So no, it's fantastic. And just in terms of maybe final thought, your presentation for the Science of Logic conference, I know it's also been an orientation for myself as well in terms of moving from a scene to a milieu and building. I think that's what it ultimately is about, right? Building an intellectual milieu, and great advertisement, by the way. That was that was some good advertising work.
Oh, you just saw that, the PSA? Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm gonna, it's like if I put like 3 or 4 days of editing and messing around with a video into something, I don't want it to be like this one-off video essay. I want it to be something I can reuse. Right. And so like that's my new approach here. And so I guess I wanted to start out by talking about 2024 and how, like, kind of what is it for us right now, and how what it is right now is pretty much defined for us, like how we are projecting it by how the last year has gone, which means like good things, bad things that aren't more, they're not good or bad. They're just, oh yeah, I tried this and now I'm trying that. And so kind of like, at Theory Underground, like it's all the first year. For you, it's like the second year. And so you've just finished out your second year. For Theory Underground, my God, like I'm going to run over the list here. I've done over 30 interviews. I've done a whole bunch of posts about sort of like the meta thing, like the method, including like that piece that I've been writing for your volume that's coming out, which is an extension of the idea of like the scene versus the milieu. My addition to it being like the struggle with time energy, because it's like time energy is the cultivation of the milieu, and if we don't have that and we're just trying to associate with a whole bunch of people, a whole spectrum of people, then, well, like, are we really doing it? Like, we can talk all day if we're good talkers, but that's not the same thing as like reading one another's works, tarrying with one another's works, following up with one another's works, which is actually why I'm going to be bringing on Daniel of OG Rose today. I know that he's one of your collaborators, that you've done a lot with him. And yeah, Daniel actually wrote and also did a YouTube video review of my book, Timenergy, Why You Have No Time or Energy. And it's like, I've wanted to do something with him for so long because I see you guys do stuff together. But I also am like, look, I've got priorities. I can't keep neglecting my research. I can't keep neglecting this and that and the other thing. But it's like, you know what? The amount of sustained effort he put towards trying to understand the work and think it through and engage with it, it's like, that's the thing I'm looking for from other people. Like, just, I'm looking for that kind of, that rigor. And I like that that you and Daniel, like, you bring that to whatever it is that you're doing. And so, yeah, we've published a bunch of posts, these 2 books this year, Underground Theory, Time Energy. We've got 8 courses up, a website. The website's, like, honestly the thing that takes most of my energy. The app is the other thing that takes, like, so much energy. My God. And at this point, it's like the business side of things is constantly drawing away from my ability to really engage with other people's work, to do my research as much as I would like to be able to do. And I know that that's something that you struggle with as well, like just like balancing all of these things. And you really are juggling a lot. And so I kind of wanted to just set you up to be like, to tell me, like, to tell us all, like, from the business standpoint, from the administrator standpoint, balancing that all with the research. What have you learned in the last couple of years that is going into 2024?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I mean, the first thing I want to say is that it's totally a trial and error process. I'm making mistakes constantly. And I think just the axiom that I've been developing since leaving the university has been die again, die better. And that's basically an axiom where it's just like, whatever mistakes I make, try to use those mistakes as the very material for sublation, for the material for some sort of progress. Actually came across a passage in the Écrit today where Lacan says that really knowledge aligns with the truth when it puts its own ignorance to work. In other words, instead of aligning with what you know, align with what you don't know, and that's how you sort of figure out the truth. So I feel like that also goes with the die again, die better thing, is that, you know, it's just whatever mistake I'm making, like whatever mistake I'm making at a certain moment, I just use that mistake as the raw material. Like, I mean, it's kind of, the downside of this is that it's kind of, you're always kind of in a state of pain because you're kind of always trying to identify with where it hurts, where you're making mistakes. But if you align with where you're making mistakes and where it hurts, I do really feel like that's where new knowledge comes in truth, if that makes sense. So I can give, like, this is, I'm talking in very abstract senses, but like I can give like examples of how this has worked. So like every year has kind of been like a sublation in terms of and sort of where I add. So like you can even think about this as like Hegel's circle of circles. So like with Hegel, it's not just like a classical pre-modern circle that just repeats its own identity. There's like a circle of circles where every circle is kind of a sublation, and like there's a gap or a lack in the previous circle. So like basically focusing on the mistakes is focusing on the lack in the circle. So like let's say like we have 1 year, like if the first year of philosophy portal, you have the first year of theory underground. I'm on the second year of philosophy portal, so I can go through one sublation. Is like, you know, I set up 2 courses, but in the first year, those 2 courses weren't able to include other guest lecturers, or those 2 courses weren't able to include students in the way that I wanted to include students, right? So those were sort of like pain points, let's say, like right. How do I include other thinkers, or how do I get students involved? Yeah. Right? How do I get them more involved than they currently are? Right? So then in like the second year, you can sort of try and approach that like but then in doing that, sort of adding extra teachers or getting students involved in different ways, you make new mistakes, right? Like that, like there are new problems, there are new complexities that come with that you can't foresee. And also there's always the problem of planning and the actual thing. Like you make a plan, and then that's the thing what I'm saying with mistakes. It's inevitable that your plan is going to, like, there are some aspects of your plan that will work. Right. Like there's some aspects that will work, but you got to prepare for, like, there's a lot of aspects of your plan that are just not going to work. Right. And you have to know that, like, that's sort of what you have to anticipate is like, my plan is not going to work. Right. Like it's going to. It's basically a question of how well is my plan going to work, and what percentage of my plan will be a total failure, right? And then so that basically your work of sublation is kind of dependent, I think, on how much of your plan is a total failure. Yes. Well, this is why. Yeah. This is why I go crazy when I hear people constantly being like, I suck at this and I suck at that and I'm not good at this and I'm not good at that. And it's like,
Yeah, that's good. That's where it begins. Yeah. That's where it begins. Like those failures, like there's a way to own the failures that doesn't curb stomp you, right? Like you're curb stomping, you're beating the shit out of yourself. And it's like,
go back to the circle of circles versus the pre-modern circle is like the pre-modern circle is like this identity of perfection, right? So like when you have this identity of perfection, then you're like literally just staring at the perfection, but you're doing that to obfuscate making mistakes and looking at those mistakes and sublating them.
And so let's unpack sublation. Right. Let's unpack sublation and how sublation is allowed by tarrying with the negative, right? So really quick, let's unpack the two terms here, sublation and the negative. You can tell me how well I'm doing because you just taught the science of logic. That, you know, that's insane that you taught that. It's so cool that you taught that the same year as the Akri. Okay, so sublation, as I understand it, the Afubung, right? It just means to like that it no longer holds the role that it held. It's still there, but it's also like undermined in some way, but it's retained. Now, what do you like or not like about that description?
No, I think the exact terminology that's used is kind of like a canceling and a lifting at the same time. Like you negate something, but you lift something at the same time. Like you're bringing something. Another way you could say it is you're bringing something to an end at the same time as you're bringing something higher. Like usually when we think about ending something, like usually like, and this is sort of like what makes Hegel's mechanism sort of like, I think, legit an antidote to nihilism, is that usually when we think of ending something or we come to realize that something's going to end or that like everything comes to an end in some way, then we're like, oh no, that's horrible. It's like everything's going to come to an end. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
the mechanism of sublation is that actually something like specifically what's coming to an end is a certain identity. And the point is that there's a larger process where that thing coming to an end is kind of a good thing, because you can take everything you've built in the previous process and you can then add to it, or you can flip it. You know, I think in a voice message you were sending to me, you were kind of articulating something like a sublation where you were talking about like, oh, you've got a cool intro for your podcast and you can just use that.
Right.
Like there was a point in time where I didn't have a cool intro. Right. So I had to bring something to an end. Like there was some problem with my editing work. Like, so I had to, I've got to lift it to a higher level. Right. And so it's the same with everything. So it's like, again, it's like, you know, and the weird thing is like from the outside, people might like, it's always kind of a trip being on the inside of something versus people seeing something on the outside. Like, where people on the outside might see something that looks beautiful or shiny or great or whatever. But on the inside, you're actually building the thing. You're actually focusing on what's not working. It's, you know what I mean? So like, it's like, oh man, this does not look beautiful on the inside at all. This looks, you know, like this looks messy.
Yeah.
Right? Like this looks difficult, right? It looks beautiful on the outside, but actually it's messy on the inside. And like, and like I think the thing also, like we could also link this a little bit with Lacan and the symbolic real, because like a lot of what the real is like focusing on what's not working. Like the real is kind of what's not working in some sense. So like it's you know, it's focusing on and you know, and if we want to bring sublation to sublimation, I think then if we bring sublation to sublimation, then we're focusing on what's not working on the level of castration. So we're like the deepest pain point, right? Like the deepest pain point is like, you know, like the sublation within your own intimate relationships, right? Like, and I think we should talk about that as well, like because it's, you know, like there's like, just like I can speak for myself, but I think you could also relate is like, you know, there's philosophy portal, but there's also my intimate relationship and my partnership and my home life and my, you know, and I think that actually for me anyway, you know, I like to combine the personal and the theoretical.
Right.
Like I think they should be in a loop with each other. Like because if we just become theoretical and like we cut ourselves off from the way the theory could improve personal or the way the personal could improve theory. Right? Like sometimes you can get deep theoretical insights just paying attention to what's going on in your personal life. And sometimes something in theory ideally could help you with what's going on in your day-to-day personal life. I mean, ideally there's a loop there.
Right.
Right. So I think that like there's like the sublation aspect of building philosophy portal, focusing on the mistakes and trying to lift it to a higher level while bringing things to an end.
Right.
But that also can apply in the personal sphere on the level of quite, you know, where things get real intimate, right? And I think that I just want to speak to that because I do think that there's a lot of people who are basically struggling with how to have long-term relationships on the level of sexual difference. And I think that, you know, the stakes for the culture there are high. The stakes for it, like, there's not just the time energy angle, but there's also just like there is the time energy angle, but the time energy angle, and there's the basic intimacy angle.
Right. And I think about
just the basic recognition.
Like, I think like the two biggest things that tend to be missing, the three biggest things. It's time energy, split subjectivity, and critical media theory. Like for me, that's where my emphasis has been over the last year. Obviously, there's also the professional managerial class as a critique of my old Marxism and as a sort of update on things, whatever. That is fundamental also to thinking about the role of education in developing us. What is it developing us for, right? What are we used to in academia? What does it make us used to? Which is basically just thinking that we are the enlightened leaders of the world and that everyone else should just subscribe to or follow us, and that if they don't like us, then they should sit down, and if they follow the wrong person, then they're done for, and if they don't have the right takes, then fuck them. And really, it's like the PMCification of academia is like a sort of source for a lot of the things we see on the internet that we don't like, but also, you know, critical media theory, split subjectivity, time energy, stultification, these all factor in. And then we as individuals, you and I both, like, we're sort of these person institutions. Like each of us is a person institution. And that's different from like something like the New Center for Research and Practice or like GCAS, where it's like, that's an extra academic institution, yes, but it's got a board, it's got committees, it's got all of this oversight, it's got all of this, like all of these different people collaborating. It's impressive. Cooperation is fantastic, cool. But like out here just trying to do it as a solo thing, I think is kind of what I was initially like, oh shit, Cadell's doing a solo thing, that's really cool. It's not just a YouTube channel, right? And I kind of wanted to set you up to talk about why you decided to not just do a YouTube channel and what some of the difficulties are with the fact that you ultimately were first based in a YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. Like, to me, it always, I mean, it really, a lot of the time does go back to sublation, because it's just a constant circle of circles that you can just keep spinning in the mistakes of the previous iteration. So like, for me, where the YouTube channel came was basically not having enough space in the university for my theory and the theory I was interested in. So like that's where the pain point was for me. The pain point was like the theory I want to study and the theory I want to explore, there's no space for it in my department. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to start a YouTube channel, right? And so that's sort of like where the Less Than Nothing series came, and that's where the What Is Sex series came, and that's where the Phenomenology of Spirit series came. Is because like I just want to study those, and I just want to make full presentations on those. Like I would want to see like that. That's the stuff I would want to see myself. So I just want to put that out there, right? But then, you know, just being a YouTube channel, like that has extreme limitations when you're not trying to be like a YouTuber, right? Like I have a YouTube channel, but I'm not like a YouTuber in the sense that like I'm not really making like pop YouTube videos in that sense. Like, I was making content that was extraordinarily niche, just as I think like Theory Underground is kind of making like niche content, and like, but like just being on YouTube, like you're extremely limited. Like you're extremely limited in terms of how you can't connect to students, you can't build a student base, you can't like so there were and also you can't make a living just making niche YouTube content, right? So there was all these negativities that were coming up. And also I was, you know, not only had I finished my doctorate, but I had gotten a postdoc, and that had come to an end. And I was just kind of getting tired with jumping through the hoops of the academic game and just sort of reckoning with the fact that I don't belong here. I don't belong in whatever academia is now. I don't belong here now. Like, maybe will I belong in academia at another point in my life? Maybe, I don't know. I'm open to whatever the future is, and I can't predict the future. But whatever academia is now, I don't fit there. I'm not welcome there. All of the processes involved in building a career there are antithetical to my theoretical drive and my creative drive. So, there's the YouTube, and then it's like, I'm just going to build my own thing, right? I'm just going to build my own thing. So I took an online business course. I just learned the basics of online business, which was incredibly difficult and challenging for me, and also triggering for me because when I got into academia, I didn't want to start a business. No. I didn't want to start a business. That's not why I got into academia. And so I do find myself constantly in a contradiction of my identity, in the sense that, like, almost every day I have, like, the thought running through my head is like, man, I don't want to run a business. Like, what am I doing running a business? Like, dude, but I'm running a business. And so like, because like, I often, like, say, like, the thought always comes to my mind, I wouldn't wish entrepreneurship on my worst enemy.
No,
it's not fun. It's not fun. You constantly have to deal with things that other people don't see, and there's all sorts of social negativities coming from running a business that other people don't see and can't relate to because they don't know what it's like to run a business. So, like, there's all those aspects to it, but then on the positive side of things, like, all of the things that Philosophy Portal has achieved in the last 2 years would not have been possible without running a business. So, like, for example, we've taught 5 major courses on 5 major academic texts. 4, if I'm not counting the What is Sex course, which was just a smaller sort of experiment with you. But the 4 major courses we've taught, I mean, I think are major fundamental contributions to philosophical history and teaching books that I don't think they've ever gotten courses of that depth and sophistication. That, like, I don't think there is a course on the Inquiry or Science of Logic like Philosophy Portal has. I don't think they exist. So in some sense, I've done something. I think I've been able to do something that I don't think exists in the universities. On the other hand, on the student end of things, we've been able to produce a Third Coming anthology, which is a community-based text, which I think is kind of a pioneering work. I don't think that, like, now you've got the Underground Theory volume, but the Enter the Alien and the Abyssal Arrows community texts were the first texts of those kinds that I've seen. And they're the first texts, I think, of those kind which are the result of a long-form course process. So you've got the course, and this came out of a sublation as well. I didn't plan it originally. You have the courses, then you have the conferences, and it's all in the course. Like, there's the course, there's the conference, and then there's the anthology, right? So there's a little loop there, which I think is like a nice little innovative, creative tool that actually does sort of add to. So we're doing lectures, we're pro lecture, but we're also pro you creating from this material. Like, it's not just like passive. There is a passive dimension to it, and then there's an active dimension to it, where you create and you get published and you learn presentation skills and you go through all those things, right? So it's, and also there's sort of like a community cohesion that comes with being a part of a course where other people are also going to be reading your work, right? And you're going to be reading other people's work. So there is that, and and then there's other things that we need to experiment with. But
yeah, man. Well, and things that we need to experiment with is kind of the theme of everything I do. Is like it's there's the actual works that are taught, the thinkers that are drawn from, the concepts that are essential to the respective fields, whether that be critical media theory or critique of political economy or critical doxology and Timenergy theory, whatever it is. But then for me, it always comes back to the meta conversation about how are we doing this process? What is this process itself? Because the process is more important. Like, it ultimately is more important. And so, like, for instance, like having Capital Mondays, that came out of I mean, Nance was like this tier 4 subscriber before tier 4 existed. And so he was there for like these readings that I was doing, or I was listening to robot readings. I was playing video games, listening to robot readings of, I don't know what books. Nance, maybe you'll remember, I was planning on bringing Nance and possibly Anne, if she's available, on here for the last like 20 minutes of our conversation so that they could also engage a little bit. So maybe Nance, you'll remember, but I remember playing Factorio, and because for me, it's like when I have garbage time, which is to say no energy infused large blocks of repeatable time energy, but all I have is garbage time because I've been working. Well, I can play some kind of like farming game or like Factorio or something like that. Just something that's just pure grind. It doesn't require following a narrative. And then I'm able to listen to whatever I'm interested in. But the thing is like listening to a difficult theory book or whatever is not the best way to read theory. You're not going to get that much from theory if you're just listening to it, but it's better than nothing. That's been my mentality since 2020. It's sure as hell better than nothing when you're exhausted. And so I started just, being a good enoughist and saying I can at least get my first pass of a text. And so I do that, and I'll play a video game and listen and get my first pass of a text. But then Nance came in, and I think maybe like 4 or 5 into the process, we actually started taking turns reading. And then we actually started doing collaborative note docs. And then we started doing like long haul sessions. Like I think the first one was the Heidegger and Ruins one that was 24 hours in 2 days, 12 hours, segments. And these were not live streamed or anything like that. They were private. But we would just listen to the Audible recording, and then we'd pause and we'd talk about it. And so I was doing like these impromptu lectures about why this matters or the context for that, because I've got my stuff in Heidegger that I'm bringing to the table. And he's bringing all of his stuff. And, he was like modeling the student relationship, because like you actually have to have that. Someone has to actually perform that role. It's why it's not purely passive, right? I mean, it is passive, but it's also like, no, like you're collaborating in a symbolic game as a student. And if you're collaborating as a student, as a student, it means like you perform being a student. Now, in other spaces, you might perform other roles, but the way he was performing it really like gave me like this energy that I didn't realize I could have during my garbage time. And so what we started doing was a lot more active, because I went from kind of from passive listening to active reading with Nance. Anyway, that grew into Capital Mondays, which is every Monday now we read Capital or works related to capital. So obviously, like there's the 3 volumes of Das Kapital, and then there's the fat set of books here, and then there's the expansion packs, Hilferding, Luxemburg, Lenin, and I would take that into these value for Marxists like Heinrich and Postone, as well as the critiques, the outsider critiques of Keynesian economics, libertarian economics, so the Austrian school. I would even bring in Popper with his epistemological critique of Marxism, and you bring all of these to bear. Well, okay, nobody has the time or energy for that, right? But the realization was to break for me, it's breaking from the linear model of reading and realizing like, no, I have a relation to capital because I live in capital and I'm trying to understand it. And yeah, it's not like, oh, I need to read volume 1 to get it over with, to get onto volume 2, to get it over with, to get onto volume 3. And oh, maybe I'll read this secondary text, but I can't read this other one. No, whatever's immediately drawing me that is related to capital, we're going to do it all day Monday. We're going to do it between 7 and, probably 4 hours. And so that's, to me, it sounds like, I know that the way I'm saying it sounds like pure positivity. But the negativity of it, and that is currently being sublated into like a new model, is the realization that my new job at Amazon just has completely put a wrecking ball into my time energy. These live events, these hub events that I was doing before the job, they just don't work the same when I'm exhausted and I'm like, I need a nap at noon because I woke up at 3 a.m. to go to work. And I just like, I don't know, I always feel like some superhuman who can do anything when I've got relative time energy. Then I get some kind of a job back, and then the whole plan I had just falls apart. and then there's little pieces of it that remain, and then I have to kind of pull it back together, right? And I think that that's where Timenergy ultimately comes into play. The stuff like with our split subjectivity, like I've got my all of my ideas about what I want to do, but then I've got like my actual undermining tendencies, right? That are a lot of them unconscious to me or whatever. But the critical media theory perspective, and I think this is where I wanted to bring it back to the business side of things, is that it's not just a business, it's a fucking online business, man. And this kills me. This kills me because it means that like we want to be reading Hegel and Lacan and Heidegger and Derrida and Deleuze and Levinas. I'm teaching Levinas soon. But instead, I got to make a quick promotion so that people actually know that this thing's happening. 5 hours later, man. 5 hours later, I'm just like, okay, well, I've officially gotten the information up on all of these different social media platforms, but they hijacked my attention. I engaged with a bunch of people who aren't serious, and now I'm fucking like the day shot, right? And so I'm wondering, like, how do you manage the attention economy? Because for me, and I know you've heard me say it before, you've related with me on this, like, I wanted to get away from the academia because of the constraints to my research, but then I'm like, oh, the attention economy also has these, like, it hijacks my attention, my ability to focus, puts me in contact with people who don't give a shit, but ultimately just want to blah, 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 and like they're not reading, like they're not actually trying to roll up their sleeves and take it on. So yeah, this is a contradiction that we're still in because we're on here right now. What's up, YouTube? Hello, TV land. So yeah, what do you think about that? And then we'll open it up to Nance and Ann here.
Yeah, man, it's that, academia is the big other, but now social media is the big other. So like there's the I mean, we can't in some sense we can't escape being a part of some system. We can't escape being a part of some system, and there's something that we experience in sort of trying to navigate these systems, which confronts us with our own castration, confronts us with our own lack, confronts us with our own impotence, right? So you for me, like I was also getting tired of the trying to follow my desire, not willing to sort of make certain constraints with the academic system, and then feeling like there's an emancipatory possibility through social media, feeling that there's an emancipatory possibility online. But the thing is that there's no pure emancipatory possibility without confronting new contradictions. Right, like kind of like maybe we could reference Todd McGowan's Emancipation After Hegel as kind of like a reconciliation with contradiction. Mm-hmm. Right, like so like every emancipatory gesture in its immediacy will confront contradiction in its mediation, and then it's just a matter of, are you willing to cognize that contradiction? Are you willing to tarry with the negativity of that contradiction? And is there the possibility for another emancipatory gesture which takes what you have built? So like there's a lot that I built through academia, which I carry with me to social media. Now I in the same way that you see sort of the limitations and the problems of social media, like I don't like playing the online social media promotional game. Right, like I try to do it as best as I can. I try to do it as tastefully as I can. I try to do it in such a way that it doesn't compromise the main drive and the main message of Philosophy Portal. I try to do it in such a way as that it really gets to the people where it could really serve. Because I really do think the product that I'm offering can really serve people and really change lives in a positive direction. So otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But at the same time, I do see sort of many imminent contradictions and negativities with what we're doing on social media, where there has to be another path. And so like, in terms of how I'm walking that right now is it's always hard to language where the next step is, like the way I've tried to language it. And I guess that's because you're thinking with the real, which is inherently difficult to language. right? Or to translate into an intersubjective discourse, which is, on the one hand, there's the academia, on the other hand, there's the social media, and is there a third path? Is there a third path, and what does that third path look like? And so, like I've sort of taken some experimental jumps into that third path. I do think that part of it has to do with trying to build some sort of bridge to live events. Part of it has to do with some bridge to connecting academic theory to other sectors of the economy and other sectors of the world. Like, one of the problems with academia is that it's so insulated in itself, and it's so in a conversation with itself, that like you never have academics like talking, actually like opening discursive bridges to bankers or, corporate leaders or, small business owners or, to me, there has to be like, basically that's what I'm trying to think through now, is how can I build bridges with theory to places outside of academia, because the problem is when you're in academia, you get it's the same thing, whether it's in the university or whether it's social media. The same thing happens. This is what happened. A bunch of academics who like reading academic texts get together, and then there's immediately some sort of hierarchy, and they all want the highest position, and they all want the recognition, and they all want to do the thing. Like, there's a bunch of people who are in Theory Underground who want to do what you're doing, Dave, and can't.
Right.
And then there's a bunch of people, probably the same thing with me with Philosophy Portal. So there basically becomes an identity war with everyone who wants a certain position, and then there's the problem of there's not much money in academia. So you have a bunch of people competing for limited money.
Right.
So I think we have to get smarter.
Yeah.
Like, if we're really serious, like, we have to find a way. Like, if we really, like, for example, if I really think Hegel and Freud are universal knowledge, or something, like you think Marx and Levinas or Heidegger, whatever, there have to be some meaningful bridge between these theoretical discourses and practical other institutions, other sectors of the economy, which could use discourse and dialogue from academics. Because, like, again, like if I go back to what was the situation in my old university, it's just a bunch of academics in an infighting competition for the top spot. And then they're like buzzards circling for the tenured position when that guy drops.
Did you hear the thing I'd brought up about critical doxology with Todd McGowan? I don't know if you caught that part of the interview.
I don't think I caught that. I caught a lot of talking about Lacan, but I didn't catch that.
So critical doxology is what I'm calling, the critique of common sense, done in like the sort of Kantian, Hegelian, Marxian kind of tradition of immanent critique, and common sense doxa, whatever. There's a lot of ways of talking about common sense, ideology. Those are related, but what I feel is missing is that, like, we tend to go after film or just like common examples like the news, like political news or film, and we talk about that as ideology. We talk about the common sense inherent in that or whatever. And I feel like that's stuff that people kind of have in the background. It's something that people watch passively. It's not something that people usually they have some kind of an ironic distance to it, whether they love it or hate it. It's kind of an ironic love or hate, because it's pretty much something that they're doing as a hobby on their quote unquote free time, which is garbage time without Timenergy. And so critical doxology, my assertion is that the place to go to actually is self-help and business success literature, because that is where people turn to in times of crisis in America. And if we were to take if I was to say, all right, we're doing a Council of Nicaea for the 21st century, let's all get together in a room and we're going to figure out what is the Holy Scripture of the 21st century. Let's put it together using a bunch of different books that are circulating right now. It would not be the movie, like the show Friends. It would not be Breaking Bad. It would not, I mean, sure, like there'd be references to that or whatever, but no, it would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. It would be 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It would be, you go down the line of all these time management and habit formation and pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Like we'd have to have 50 Cent's Rules of Power or something.
Yes, dude, Robert Greene with 50 cents. And so that is the approach.
Shout out to 50 Cent.
And so like this actually sets me up to say, we are doing that, the Council of Nicaea experiment. It will be one of the segments of the Theory Underground conference that is coming up. I'm looking over at my calendar on the whiteboard there, in October in Boise, October. We're doing a Council of Nicaea event where people get to present on the books that they think would make the cut and the books that should not make the cut. And kind of just like have a conversation about what would be the holy scripture of 21st century capitalism, and then what would be the approach to interpreting it and the approach to critiquing it. And so the time energy theory course that's kicking off in January is actually called Critical Doxology and Time Energy Theory, because for me, my path into theory started with listening to Joe Rogan. It started with listening to him as a worker who had never gone to a regular school, who didn't learn to read before the age of 12, who didn't do any serious nonfiction reading at all up to that point when I was like 21, 22 years old, listening from, while stocking grocery stores. I'm just listening. And, I was into the idea of like DMT and float tanks and whatever. And then all of a sudden he's having conversations with intellectuals, and I'd never heard intellectual conversation. I'd never heard it. Like my whole life, there had never been intellectual conversations, and people always just tried to shut me down if I tried to engage at a level of, but why? And a level of, but how? You know what I mean? Like the why and the how, people are like, fuck off. Like, let's just be practical. And I was always just like, but why don't people care about questions? And then listening to Joe Rogan, I was like, oh my God, like he's bringing on these people. And so that actually kind of made academia like this thing where it's like, oh, there's intellectuals there. I had never thought about that because I didn't have anybody in my life who had gone to school. And so that's why I say on the back of the Waypoint book that I was a feral child in the woods. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't have like these social reference and cultural milieu that people tend to have. And so my buddy Chris, who I love dearly, and I never thought that he would actually listen to this channel. I think he might be listening today. He started listening during the tour we did this year. He and we just started listening to so many of these self-help books that we were hearing referenced. And we got into the power of positive thinking to the point that I know we were fucking obnoxious, but people loved us because we were so positive all the time. But it's like we would like fake smile while working the night shift, stocking shelves. And it would goof off, and we're like, well, we're tricking our brains into being happy because this is what the books were saying, right? And it took a little bit longer because I got really pilled on the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, responsibility. It all comes down to time management and habit formation. And it wasn't until my life collapsed, and I would say one of the reasons my life collapsed was just like, you can only do so much willpower for so long before it collapses. It's not enough to willpower your way through things. And coming back from a pretty brutal period of my life, I was like, I should go to school, and I was going for something practical, but thankfully I took like a class that first semester in philosophy. I didn't know what philosophy was at this point. I'd never heard of Socrates. It absolutely changed my life though. Because that professor was teaching a political philosophy class. I was in love with everything he was teaching, but he didn't do Marx justice. In fact, he did everyone justice, but we did Sparks notes on Marx, whereas everyone else we were being very rigorous. And so I was like, what's with this bias? I was so confused because I didn't understand that he was a conservative because he didn't teach like a conservative. And so I ended up enlisting somebody to teach us some Marx, and for the philosophy club at the time. And that was when I first read A Strange Labor, and it was my first like realization in my entire life that it's not just individuals that are responsible. That yes, there's that, but also there are structures that we're running up against, and we can't just be idealist utopians who are not engaging with the actual structures that run the world. right? And so that's trying to, sublating the negativity of self-help is what gives birth to time energy theory. And so people like see some kind of carryover, and it's like, it's not accidental. That comes down to the most intimate particularity of not just me, but I think of people who are trying to better themselves and who don't have any real social reference points of role models to be able to do that with, right? So anyway, I wanted to bring that up because you were talking about like building these bridges. I just feel like these bridges can ultimately be built into that world of people who are trying to better their lives, and then say, yes, you should try to better your life. Yes, David Goggins is correct. You should be pushing your limits, but he only pushes his physical limits. He does not try to read the science of logic or being in time.
Yeah, imagine if he all those pull-ups. All those pull-ups need some balance, right? But anyway, yeah. I mean, I totally see your point. I mean, it's this idea you could just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and just have this idea of individualistic responsibility. I mean, there's and just power through it. This is ultimately the crisis we're experiencing. Like I was saying, the crisis of the big other, like whether it's academia or social media. Like, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if I was living in a sane world, if I was living in a world where the actual social structures were working somewhat properly, like it'd never be perfect, right? But if the actual social structures were functioning properly, someone like me would have a job. Like someone like you would have a job. Someone like Michael Downs would have a job. Like, yeah. The fact, like, to me, like the fact that people like me or you are just in a wasteland is proof that, like, our social structure, like, I feel like we're in an extremely dark time. Like, yeah. The fact that the fact that you're talking about building a Council of Nicaea for the 21st century, we're in an extremely dark time. Like, you know how fucking dark that is?
Yeah, man.
You're creating analogies of the dark, of basically we're going back to the dark ages. And like I have friends like Owen Cox who says like we are entering the dark ages again. Like we're entering a new dark ages. And like maybe we are entering a new fucking dark ages, because whatever the hell, like I always say, like at the end of the day, whatever the solution is, there has to be some sort of new social contract. Because if there's not a new social contract, I mean, what we have right now is not a society.
No,
so
and
I'll end it there.
That's been kind of my whole grind. Is like, I mean, I've not written anything on this, but Catherine Luce has abolished the liberal arts, colleges, and I say, yes, but that what is being done at liberal arts colleges should be made available to anybody who has a seriousness about like actually tackling these things, and then freely available at public libraries. They shouldn't exist at the university, because the university is a job training place, and that's all it needs to be. And before so Anne and Nance are coming on here, but I had a PS that I wanted to ask before we go into this, and so that's just like this. We just did that whole Nick Land course. You were there for that. It was amazing, right? And I didn't realize when I was first talking to you and you told me that you were studying lemurs and you felt like it was all pointless, that you were doing this as a biologist. I didn't realize the whole lemur thing with Nick Land. Did you know about that?
No, I actually had never studied Nick Land very deeply, no.
Yeah, so you were literally at the university going, why am I studying lemurs? And then now here you are at Theory Underground studying lemurs again. So I just wanted to say that.
I don't know. What is there? I don't know. Is somehow related to hyperstition? Am I picking up the words?
Demon lemurs.
Yeah, I think that there were probably some people.
And it's great to see you both.
Yeah, welcome you two. I'm gonna run downstairs and refill my water bottle. I want to just like let Anne and Nance each get to ask like a question or like reflect on our conversation so far, and I'll be listening from downstairs as I get some water.
Do we have questions? What's going through your mind right now? What we just listened to, the social breakdown of society, the Council of Nicaea for the 21st century. Is this where we are?
I think we are, and I think I mean we have to sublate that, right? Like we can't have something new until we finally cast off the dead weight or whatever. It's so like I don't know. I think I sometimes fall into like a gleeful pessimism. And I don't want to stay there. Like I don't think it's a good thing, but also like, yeah, we are fucked. Like it has come to all that, I think.
Yeah.
And I think
feels
it's just
like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think we really have to reckon with technology and its place in the world and our relationship with it. And that means experimenting and coming up with new forms of education and social congress and like all these things that is being done at Philosophy Portal and Theory Underground and places like this. Like it's not just idle content creation. It is trying to do something. Because we're not in a good place right now.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially with like I guess like that's sort of like the limitations with like what I was talking about, the limitations of just being a YouTube content creator, because that is kind of like a little bit idle content creation. It's like with something like Theory Underground, you've got a course platform there that you can sort of, you can dive in deeper with people, and there's a larger mission there. But I just want to say I totally agree that it seems to me like it's fundamentally about this qualitative, and this is why I think the Council of Nicaea might not really work as a reference point, is that we're in such a different technological environment. It's like, literally, I'll just throw that out to a question to maybe like both you and Nance and Anne, is like, how do we reckon with how different the technological landscape is than just the 20th century? And not only that, but I don't think it's going to slow down. Like when you have someone like Elon Musk literally trying, like he's literally put out a call to have people put a brain chip in their head. So then how many years away that's my question. How many years away are we from having people with brain chips in their head? And do those people behave differently? Do those people sync up differently? Do those people interact differently? And then is there then a pressure for everyone to do such, these are the types of questions that whatever Council of Nicaea has to take that into consideration.
I think necessarily, yes, all those things. But I also always go back to like language itself is this technology that totally changed the world, but also created conditions of possibility for what we recognize as human activity, human life, human experience. Like we wouldn't have any of that without this technological augmentation in the first place. So like, I think there has to be a way to incorporate technology into like a human life world. I always kind of want to push back on what feels like to me is alarmism, because sometimes I do get afraid. I look at my teenage kids and I'm just like, we're totally fucked. And I have to like catch myself and say, we're not.
Tell me what do you see with your teenage kids that makes you say we're totally fucked?
Just like I don't know, their relationship with the world, that like the post irony, the post care, the post, like they're just different. They relate to the world differently. They're very much concerned with instantaneous activity. They don't seem to think long term. Just the standard old man yelling at clouds bullshit. Like, but also, no, there has been qualitative changes because the world just works differently now. The pacing of the world is different. So we have to find a way to catch up with that and utilize it for our own benefit. And I know I will be the old man yelling, get off my lawn. And I don't know.
I think
man
Anne,
yelling at clouds moment.
I think this is a good, Anne.
I just think like yes, but I'm younger than Nance, and I'm even more of the old man. I'm like, no, we all need to go to the post office physically, and we all need to like get brick phones again, because there's something about this technology, whereas like past technologies maybe felt like they were like enhancing the human, like whatever we want to define these technologies as. And then there's something about having a screen in front of your eyeballs. Not only is it like physically doing something to you, but there's something about that that's different than the other technologies. That's like removing you from everything and everyone around you. There's something about the social medias or the dating apps or the video games or like whatever that I think, like, studies are showing that kids literally have less empathy. I don't know if there's other technologies we can point to historically that have made children less empathetic, that have made children as angsty and ADHD, so much so that parents are now putting them on 1, 2, 3 different medications at the age of 12. Like, there's something about this technological surge that just feels like it's targeting our humanness in a way that other things didn't. And so that's where I think maybe some alarmism is warranted. It's like, you're telling me now you want to put a chip in my brain. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, here, have some glasses. Oh, here, have some braces. Oh, here, have some hormones, like, to feel how you need to feel. But, like, I'm going to put a chip in the thing that, like, runs your body and your intellectual inner life. Like, control over that, please. It's mind control. That's what, like, horror movies and scary sci-fi movies and books are about.
I just want to say something quickly about, like, so I had an experience. So in terms of like I think the screens is the big one, like you're saying, Anne. Like, but like the immediate contradiction is like Theory Underground and Philosophy Portal are screen based, at least at the moment. So that's the contradiction. But then in terms of like what you were saying about glasses, I accidentally misplaced my glasses traveling a few weeks ago. And I've been using my glasses for 2 years, 3 years. I got them originally because it's not that my eyesight is bad, but like the glasses do make it a little bit better. Like it made reading a little bit better. And then when I lost the glasses, I was like, oh, I'm really having trouble reading. But then because I haven't gotten new glasses yet, over the last 2 weeks, my eyesight has literally gotten better. Like I'm reading. So my point is that the glasses reduced my biological capacities to read. So like I'm thinking like this on the scale of screens. Like that because of like we've literally stunted and disabled our social capacities, maybe, or our capacity to sense or interact with the world, in the same way that just me buying a pair of glasses reduced my capacity to read without the glasses until I didn't have them anymore.
I wanted to say, like, on this note of sublation that we were talking about, there's also because Marx at least had the idea of Aufhebung or sublation in mind, like he never said feudalism went away, it got sublated. Right? He never said the aristocracy's gone away, it got sublated, which is why there's still aristocrats, which is why there's still feudal lords. These things, there's still serfs, they still exist. Slavery also still exists. People think that these things go away. No, they just stop being central, and then they get to be peripheral, but they still have a role to play. And that, the critical media theory and the research that I do with Nance and Ann, as well as the rest of the people in the cooperative, or I called it a cooperative. Fuck, it's not a cooperative. But the cohort, but it is like a sort of cooperative research project. It's just structured like a course at a seminar. Anyway, but that's why we're doing it, is because the conditions have changed so fundamentally. And first we have to come into a freer relation with our devices to even be able to do theory nowadays, because otherwise we can't even read. But also, one of the ways that we sublate is the Protestant Reformation. and liberalism itself, which did not exist at the Council of Nicaea. And so it's like, yeah, we're in the dark age that is post-liberal revolution, that is post-bourgeois revolution, that is post-communist resistance and collapse and failure and, sublation. And so we are in this weird situation today. But so I think sublating the Protestant Reformation in this analogy means that the Council of Nicaea is not a group of people who come together and we say, all right, we got it figured out. We're going to top down decide how it is. Instead, we're not even supposed to be doing this. The people who are supposed to be doing this aren't doing this. We get together and we say, well, if it was me, this is how I would do it. How would you do it? Think for yourself, motherfucker. And that's what we all are ultimately supposed to do. But I want to let you say some closing thought here, Cadell, because we actually have to turn it over here. Got to get ready for the next one.
Okay. I'm just so happy with where this conversation went. I just I really like what you were thinking there with sublation, the Protestant Reformation, liberalism, and specifically it's a Council of Nicaea. It's the Dark Age. It's a Council of Nicaea, post-liberal revolution, post-communist revolution. This is so important. I can't stress how important that idea is, because there are so many people who don't have a historical memory or who are just coming to these ideas for the first time, and they think we can just go back to the Council of Nicaea. Yeah. No, you can't. No, the history of our civilization. You can't dehistoricize actual history. Everything that's happened throughout history since that point is something that represents crucial moments of sublation, which we need to carry forth with us, which make our situation even that much more complex, even that much more difficult. But I was just saying, in some sense, what Philosophy Portal is, at least for what I speak, it is kind of like my little Council of Nicaea, in the sense that I'm saying this is the literature that I think that is going to be essential moving forward. Right. These are the texts that I hope. These are this is what the university isn't teaching right now, and I think needs to be teaching right now. And so if you also feel like you're not getting the education you need in the university, this is why I'm doing this. And I'm not saying that when I say this is the curriculum, I'm not saying that is the universal curriculum. I'm saying that there needs to be other such attempts at that, which is why, I think that's why it needs to be a milieu. It needs to be an ecology of different schools that are also doing this work. I think that's really the stake. It can't just be top down. It has to. And I think that is what we get from the Protestant Reformation, is this idea that your engagement with the text matters. That's in some sense what the Protestant Reformation was emphasizing. And then also what the Protestant Reformation opened up was liberalism, which we do need to sublate. We can't just negate it, right? And everything that came from liberalism, like the individual rights revolutions, where we're not in a feudal system anymore. And capitalism was an advance on feudalism, and that's why I really like what Yanis Varoufakis is saying about techno-feudalism. Is that because we're not engaging capitalism, then we don't go forward. We regress to feudalism, I think. So I think there is a lot at stake with really thinking deeply capitalism and working with it and understanding all its negativities to be able to sublate capitalism to something that's more socialistic or something that's more communistic. I think. I don't really need to say anything more than that, but I think those are the stakes.
Well said. Thank you so much, Cadell. Right. Looking forward to talking to you soon.
So, good luck with the rest of your stream. Great seeing you and Nance, and I'll hop off here.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thinking is super uncool, and that's why you should do it. It's just almost anything that's cool anymore. It just sucks. And I think that's what the underground movement has always been about, is just seeing what's in the mainstream, being it ain't there, and kind of cobbling something together, and it's a little mismatched, but that's its beauty.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, where workers with earbuds can find genuine liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
We bring primary texts from leading lights of diverse fields to bear on topical issues and works popular in our current world. Theory Underground is a publishing house as well as lecture course and social media platform.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Yes.
And
amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run a review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Jesus Christ.
Seriously.
This is a little experiment in what I, David McKerracher, can pull off without relying on the academy or the algorithmic dictates of the attention economy.
Usually, a good edited collection has good essays, but you only want to read a few. Every essay makes me want to read the other essays because you have a vision. Everyone that you invited for a reason. You weren't some fake publicist. He's like, "How's so-and-so's a new book? Have them on your show." No, you only talk to people because you've read shit by them that you've thought about, that you think has value, even if you disagree. So I think that's what's amazing.
I believe that I am, like so many others, pioneering a future in which educators can form learning webs that will make learning as a way of life enjoyable and emancipatory. However, before these tools become accessible, they have to be experimented with. That's why I built my own website and app using nothing more than my own saved wages, 5 patrons, and some small classes of students over the last year. Of course, I also have had my wife Anne's moral support and help with accounting so that I don't get in trouble with the IRS or whatever. In less than a year, Theory Underground has already put out 8 courses, 2 books. One, my book, Timenergy, and the other, Underground Theory, which has over 30 contributors, including works written by students at Theory Underground, some of my fellow travelers, and colleagues in the broader universe of Underground Theory. Beyond the books and courses, though, you will also find interviews, reading exegetical reaction sessions, and live weekly events for working class autodidacts, independent researchers, and renegade academics. These include a variety of clubs and cohorts that meet on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to get involved, there are 4 main subscription levels.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind.
The point is to make learning, practice, and theoretical comprehension a way of life. Support at this stage of the operation is more crucial than ever because my savings were used up over the last year of getting this established. If I can triple my subscribers in the next 2 months, I can quit my gig at Amazon and focus on this work full time. All I need is a few more people at each of the levels or a couple big time patrons who just want to see it happen. Right now I am doing a patron and site subscriber drive, so excuse the commercial. But if you end up really liking what goes on at this channel, consider signing up soon. If you cannot afford it, but want to get involved with some of the stuff behind the paywall, I have made a financial aid scholarship you can sign up for here in the description. Quick side note, some people ask about the profit motive. At this point, I have not actually made a return on any of my investment in terms of the amount of time energy that I put into things, the amount of savings I've actually put into things, the opportunity cost of the work that I'm doing as opposed to the other kinds of things that I could be doing for money. But more importantly, I don't actually make enough to pay for my cost of living. The goal is to make enough for my cost of living, and then once that is achieved, everything over that amount is going to go towards expanding the operation to the point where I can hire Michael Downs, aka Mikey of The Dangerous Maybe, to be a full-time researcher and part-time teacher at Theory Underground. Alright, so with that aside, I just want to say also, if you are a worker with earbuds, what's up? I see you. I work at Amazon part-time and everything I do is for my past self who used to work there full-time. Most workers with earbuds couldn't care less about theory, but I do believe a working class intellectual revolution could grow out of the underground theory scene. My hope is that what I have built here will contribute to making the scene something more than just a scene, and you into something more than just a scene kid. We're trying to make this into a real intellectual milieu capable of leading a way forward beyond the imminent crises facing humanity. But for that, we need thinking now more than ever.
Start thinking.
I hope that you either will or have enjoyed the program. And also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave this playing in the background all the time while you're doing other things.
Playing long-form Theory Underground content in the background while you do things has, in the near future, been scientifically proven to emancipate minds from the functional illiteracy imposed on workers by the structural stultification of time energy. This is achieved by reterritorializing circumspective concern.
Also, to some degree, it is for the algorithm.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind!
I love you so much.
I love you too.